Welcome back to the Online Trainer Show. No, that's not right. That's not the name of the show. That was the name of two shows previous. Do you
That
remember?
was awesome.
That wasn't even the name of the last show. That was the name of 2 shows ago.
That was
Wasn't
so
it?
awesome.
Ooh, John is on old default. We need to reboot him.
Wow.
That was like a glitch. That was like a glitch in the system, in the John Goodman system.
It was
All right,
awesome,
welcome
though.
back to the Obvious Choice podcast. So we're continuing today on what we did in the last episode. I think we're on like number 6, number 7. But what's the title of this again, Amber?
Oh man, you're gonna ask me that.
You said you had it out.
I have your post out. 22 lessons from a coaching business that makes $5 million a year.
Okay, so 22 lessons from the coaching business, from basically my life and my business that I thought were the most important, and we're going through each of them and giving a little bit of context, because I put this post up on Instagram and it's great, but it's like short snippets and doesn't have any stories or any nuance or context or anything behind it. So I thought it good to add that in. So let's just continue. So Amber's asking me the question, and then we'll go.
Yep. So I like this one a lot. Default to generosity. You'll never regret giving a gift or doing a good deed.
So why is it that every single time you feel like doing something nice to somebody or for somebody, there's like a part of you that's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't?
Yep.
I don't know if you feel that. You're both nodding.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're gonna think I'm weird. They're gonna think I want something.
Like, I can't even. I mean, you just explained it with words that I've actually never. Like, I can't even figure out why it is that I have this block.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I want to do anything for anybody, somebody puts up a GoFundMe account, or you're just like, oh, maybe I should like call this. But for example, somebody messaged me, like I have on my website that I offer consulting. I actually just did a call where it's like an hour, and I put a price that I didn't think anybody would pay. I put it as $1,000 an hour, and people keep booking it, so I got to like double it. And so I just did one of them. But somebody messaged me about it, said that they wanted to book in, and I said, oh, like tell me about your situation first. And he told me about it, and I was like, okay, well, you're involved in hockey. Basically, he wants to rise up the ranks in the hockey world.
Oh.
He works for the USA Hockey Association. And I was like, well, I'm not the right person to speak to, but I know who is. And so I messaged somebody I actually used to work out with. His name's Alan Selby, who was the assistant strength conditioning specialist for the Calgary Flames, and now is the head S&C coach for the Toronto Marlies, which is the Toronto Maple Leafs OHL affiliate team. And so like a big deal in the hockey world. And I just introduced the two. I was like, I don't need $1,000. Like, you guys just like, he'll help you better than I ever could. Right. And but like there's this block when we do things. So I don't remember where I heard that line, default to generosity, but it's a very helpful, quick reminder whenever that dumb, idiotic block comes in my head, when there's a charity thing, or somebody's raising money for something that they care about, or I just feel like I see something and I'm like, oh, I want to like get them a gift, whatever. And then for some reason I start to stop myself for reasons that you just described with words. That idea of default to generosity is really, really helpful. Another one that I didn't include there is actually default to trust. Which is another philosophy that I live by. Now, this one will be, I feel like default to generosity is not that contentious, but default to trust might be. I have decided that I want to live my life where I trust people and associations and governing bodies. And that might not be right. And I don't actually think that, probably, and sometimes they're not actually acting in my best interest. But I also just don't really want to live my life feeling like everything is a conspiracy against me. It's just like, philosophically, that's just how I decided I wanted to go about my day, was that I'm going to trust you unless you give me direct reason otherwise, but I'm going to default to that trust. And if you think about, as you walk around every single day, think about how much trust we have to live in a society. If you ever walk on the second floor of any building ever, think about how many people you have to trust unconsciously in order to live on that building, or in order to step on that building. The architects, the safety inspectors, the material people, like, think about how many of those things you have to trust the person who controlled the traffic lights. You have to like all of this stuff where we unconsciously default to trust, and that's why we're able to exist in the world that we live in. So those two rules, not so much rules, but those two philosophies have been very, very useful to me. The default to generosity and just getting out of my head of being like, oh no, like even if that person doesn't do anything good for me back, it'll still make me feel good to do something like good for that person. If I feel like it, if I ever get like the desire to. And then default to trust just keeps me out of so much of what seems to be distracting and bothering people, particularly in the last couple of years of, I just, for better or for worse, I just want to live my life and do my thing and do work that I think is meaningful with people that I care about, and go home and rest well that night. And that's just how I've decided to live my life and focus. So default to trust, default to generosity.
It would hurt me less by defaulting to trust and then being wrong versus being skeptical and then being wrong about that. Like that would hurt me way more deeply, like not trusting someone that I should have versus the other way around. So I don't know if you felt that way, but like I want to avoid that feeling.
Well, I think there's a later one that maybe we can skip to on this list. I think it was on this list about how the only people that you shouldn't trust are the people who keep telling you that you should trust them.
Don't trust people who try hard to convince you to trust them. That's a good segue.
Yeah, so it's a good segue. So I'll tell you the story behind that. Multiple times in my career, I've been engaged in partnership discussions and stuff like that. And the only times when it's gone poorly, when I look back, I'm like, this person tried really hard to convince me that they were trustworthy. And I now realize that they're very much overcompensating. Like if I'm just meeting you or we're talking about working together and you on your own bring up all of the times when other people could trust you, it's like, why are you bringing that up? Like that should be something that's assumed. It shouldn't be something that you feel like you need to go ahead and say. The same type of thing. It's like if I'm doing something with somebody and they're very litigious, like, hey, it's like, I want to work with people that I can do a 1-page contract with, and not people who they feel like they need a 50-page contract. Because the people who feel like they need a 50-page contract, I'm always thinking is like, well, what's the 51st? Like why are they so nervous about this deal? And I'm trying to think of a specific story without like outing a person. But okay, so we worked with somebody a couple years back. I won't give any defining details, but he partnered with us on one of the projects with our company. And in the onboarding with him, it was just like the back and forth for the contract was like 3 months long. And that should have been my first worry. And he kept talking about all the other times when he's been wronged by partners.
That'll do it.
And if you wake up in the morning and you see an asshole, you might have seen an asshole. If you go outside of your house and you see another asshole, odds are not good, but it might just be that you were unlucky and ran into 2 assholes. But then later in that day, if you come across another asshole, I got bad news for you, dude. You are the one who is the asshole.
You're the asshole.
This guy had like 5 bad business partnerships before, and every single time it wasn't his fault. He just had bad luck. This contractor was horrible. This coach that worked with me was horrible. This person was horrible. And I have realized now from working with him that he was in fact the asshole. And then he did the biggest asshole move ever at the end of it when we finally worked with him for about a year, and when we finally finished working with him. So there's something that you can do. There's financial terms, like he had like a profit share in what we were doing, and he requested a full financial audit afterwards, which he was in his right to do, but like all of the accounting. So there was like couple thousand customers in this thing. So like all of the accounting, everything they paid, exactly where the money went, exactly what he was paid, line by line by line. It's like first of all, he knew straight up that he made more money out of this deal than we did, and we operated the whole thing. It's just the biggest asshole move that you could ever do to anybody, because I know that he didn't look at it. I mean, we never heard from him again. Mm. It was just his way of being like, I feel like you've wronged me because you've decided to cut this project. And so this is my way of just like getting you. So that's where that one comes from. If you're working with somebody in any capacity, could be a relationship too. Like, I know a guy, he's in our industry. I won't tell you when and Amber who it is afterwards, but I won't talk about it in the podcast. They were really, really upset that his girlfriend cheated on him with somebody else and left him. Well, she cheated on her previous boyfriend with him. That's why they were together. How do you expect that it's going to be any different?
He was special.
And so if somebody tries to convince you that they're super trustworthy and you haven't like asked they're volunteering that information, I'm not saying necessarily like absolutely don't work with them or don't, I don't know, have sex with them or whatever, but like you can still have sex with them, I guess, but like be in like a deep like emotional relationship with them. But like
solid advice there, John.
Yeah,
but
got off the rails quick.
But I'm not going to make a joke about being on the rail. But but it's definitely a red flag.
Yeah. Do your due diligence.
Sheesh.
Yes.
All right. Next one.
What do we got next?
Read the book before watching the movie.
Yeah, I mean,
never.
This one might be specific to me. I just the beautiful thing about books, is you don't know what the characters look like, so you get to make it up in your head. You don't know what the scenes look like, so you get to make it up in your head. And also, great books are often like a slow burn, and there's a real payoff reward at the end of it. Like a book with a great ending. There's a trilogy. Oh my God, what's the Brandon Sanderson, who's a fantasy writer, and he's written like, not anywhere to that extent. He writes just like 1,000 books. Like the amount of books that he's written is just frightening. But he's a world creator, and so they're very good page turner type fantasy books. But what's interesting is that he is, I believe he's Mormon. He's one of the he's if he's not Mormon, he's one of those things like Mormonism.
One of those things.
He's one of those things. And that's what it is. And so what's really interesting is that there's often deep religious and political overtones to what he's saying, to the worlds that he builds. And it makes it for a very interesting read. Anyway, one of the trilogies that he wrote is called the Mistborn trilogy. And they were fantastic books. So if you're looking for a trilogy of books to read, I definitely recommend it. The first one, he did like a follow-up. Don't read that. It's not as good. But I'm talking like 300, 500, 600 page books. Now they move fast. They're page turners. But it's like 1,500, 1,600 pages that you're reading as you're getting deep into the story. And it is the perfect ending. This guy, you don't know it when you're reading it. This guy teased the ending from like page 5 of the first book. I mean, it's one of those things where you read it and you're like, how did somebody put these puzzle pieces together in this way? It's incredible that it comes out of a human brain to me. You wouldn't ever get that in a movie because a movie has to move fast. I mean, movies are what, an hour and a half now? You lose so much detail in movies. And so I love movies, I love TV, but generally I've been disappointed by movie adaptations of books. Ready Player One was a perfect. Ready Player One, the book was so good. So good. One of the best fiction, one of the most enjoyable page turner fiction books I've ever read. The movie was such shit. Well, you want to know also why the movie was so bad. They couldn't get the rights to any of the characters. Ready Player One was like this homage to like 90s nostalgia, like video games.
That makes sense.
And they didn't get the rights to any of the characters basically for the movie.
Makes sense.
So all of the like great stuff about Pac-Man, about all of these characters and stuff like that were just not in it.
Wow.
Or they just use different like lesser known things, I guess, that they could get the rights for. Anyway. Yeah, there's not much more to it than that.
Oh, I have a question.
I always think read the book before the movie, and read the book before the movie. I'll get to your question in a bit. Read the book before the movie is for books. Yes, it's also a metaphor for travel and for exploration. When Allison and I travel, we never Google what a place will look like before we go there. If we're going to a tourist attraction, we're going to see, I don't know, castle. We're going on some hike. We're going to wherever. We never look at what it's supposed to look like. Because the pictures are always the best picture you find on the internet of like the castle on the perfect day that you're going to in Scotland is always going to look better than what you see when you go there anyway. And so we get to any of these places that we've traveled far and wide to go to, and everybody else who's there is like, oh yeah, it looks just like the postcard, it looks just like the website. And I'm like, Alice and I are looking like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they're like, dude, you're looking the wrong way, it's over there. And so this idea of read the book before the movie is yes for books, but it's also a metaphor for life of don't ruin shit. Keep your eyes open, keep that wonderment alive. What were you going to say, Amber, before I interrupt?
So, random question. So you mentioned about when reading a book, being able to imagine your own characters and the scenery and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Can you actually see it in your head? Like if I ask you to close your eyes, okay, because this has really bothered me because my entire family can do this. Like if you close your eyes and I ask you to picture an apple, can you actually see the apple?
No.
And which apparently that is an unusual thing to not be able to do.
Well, I mean, an apple I can.
Well,
I know what an apple looks like.
Right, but can you actually see it as if it were real in front of you?
Oh, yeah.
See, and I can't. It's pure blackness.
No,
so
that's weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's super random.
But if I'm reading a book, I don't see the character.
Uh-huh.
If they're calling attention to specific aspects of that character or something on that character's being, then yeah, I'll start to see it. But I don't see the character.
Interesting.
No. Okay. In my head.
Okay. That's it.
No. Were you going to say something?
I just feel like as a collective organization, it's our fault that Amber only sees blackness, only darkness. There's only darkness in her mind. I feel like some way that's on us. I don't know. You always like that?
It's always the perky ones you got to watch out for.
Yeah, it just made me sad when she said that.
No, but apparently, like most people can actually see what they imagine in their head, and I can't do that, and that's it. I feel like I got screwed out of a superpower.
Were you going to say, Ren, that she should see whiteness?
I'm just saying, it's like Bane out of Batman 3. I was born in the dark. You merely adapted the dark. That's sad, man. I feel like I personally send her one too many emails, and this is the result of my nonsense. Is that she only darkness surrounds her now.
It might be from the last email that John sent me. This one's for you.
Maybe so.
Oh yeah, every email that I don't want to deal with that I get, I just you, buddy.
Yep.
The last one wasn't bad. No, the last one wasn't bad. I just didn't want to
it's fine. All right. Anyway,
next.
Don't read the business book if the author that wrote it needs the money from its sales.
Yeah, so this one I actually changed a little bit from the last time that I wrote it. The last time that I wrote this post, it was don't read the book if the author wrote it to make money. I don't think there's anything wrong with authors writing books to make money, but I do think that a lot of people try to write really shitty books, particularly self-published really shitty books, because they think that if they write a really shitty book, somehow that's going to lead to sales, but they haven't actually done anything notable yet. Books are, I think, the best way in the world to... the books are the best deal in the world. For $20 or $30 or whatever it is, you get this person's experience of often decades of wins and losses and hits and misses, and you get that all beautifully put together in however many pages the book is. The problem is that, though, with self-publishing, a lot of books, the person doesn't have any experience that's worth knowing. And so it's not necessarily. Here's the thing. You have to have filters around this stuff, and the filters have to be pretty good, but they can't be perfect. Are there some authors, business authors, who need the money from the book sales that have something worth knowing? 100%. But I do think it's a pretty good knee-jerk filter to eliminate a whole bunch of stuff and make our decisions of what to read and what not to read a lot easier. To use that as a filter, to be like, okay, well, did this person write a book because they really need the money from it? Or did this person write a book because they've had all of these successes and this is like a legacy piece? The first one doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't anything worth reading in that book, but the second one means that you can be pretty assured that that book is worth reading. And there's just a lot of books that I want to read, as you, Amber. And I need filters to decide quickly how to do it. Because I can't sit there and like read the inside jackets of like 100 books to be like, okay, maybe this is interesting. And then I'm like 20 or 30 pages in. I'm like, no, this guy actually is 24 years old and basically built a Twitter account one time. And now is trying to monetize it by self-publishing a PDF. It's like, well, I don't know. There's better stuff to read.
For sure. Okay, so speaking of reading, read a lot, but make space to think a lot too.
Ooh, yeah. I think we think too little. I think we take in way too much information. A lot of the work that I'm doing now is thinking work. I'm not reading as much as I used to. I'm reading like kind of denser things at the moment. Like I'm reading a lot about decision making. I'm reading a lot about objectivity. I'm reading a lot about psychological biases. But it's not like a lot of words and pages I'm reading. It's just, I'm like, oh, okay, well, like that's, yeah, no, that makes sense. Like you don't actually have to be great at anything. You just have to not screw up and be good for a long time. Like that's actually the secret to success. You don't actually have to take risks. You don't actually have to solve hard problems. You just have to find easier problems to solve. Like there's enough easy problems that you can solve to achieve whatever amount of success you want to achieve, and you never have to tackle the hard problems. And so I'm thinking about that stuff a lot, but I'm reading a lot less. And then the other part that I'm kind of finished this part of like what I was reading about, but this idea of task switching and how energetically exhausting it is, and how much it kind of abuses our brain. Like people used to be proud that they could multitask. The amount of research that comes out just shows how useless you are when you try to multitask. And when you try to switch between things, or you have beeps and bops on your phone or your computer popping up with notifications and you're trying to concentrate on something, and just how worse of a job you do at whatever you're doing. And so a lot of what I'm really working on now is, if I'm doing something, I'm doing it, or I'm not. There's no in between. And that means that I'm going to do a lot less than I used to do, which means that I'm going to take a lot more time to think about the steps I'm going to make and the actions I'm going to take. And because I can only do a few, right? And then when I do them, I don't want to hear from your stupid face because I'm focused on doing those things. And I'm zoned out a lot more. In fact, tomorrow, like after this podcast, I'm basically packing up my stuff and I'm heading up to a family's cottage. Allison's family is a cottage, and I'm going by myself with no internet, and I'm staying till Sunday. It's Wednesday night. I'm staying for 4 days, and I'm bringing like a ton of books, and I'm bringing the book that I'm working on, and I'm basically just like gonna go for walks and work out, because one of the best ways to think is actually to exhaust your body, ironically enough. And so I'll work out hard, I'll go for runs, I'll walk, I'll read a lot, and I'll write a lot. Yeah. Anything else on that?
Yeah.
Did I make any sense? I feel like I talked in circles a lot.
Well, you talked about the cottage too much for me, but this is one of my pet peeves, because if I'm being honest, because in the peripheral sort of areas of our industry, the self-help phenomenon is recklessly, it's just everywhere. And I am personally, and I'm not annoyed by much, but I'm personally annoyed by all my book hustler friends who show a new book in their stories every 2.5 days. I'm like, this is you, Amber. Amber raised her hand. She said, "I feel so seen." Because
yeah, you want to know who buys all those books for Amber?
I haven't even put in anything for this year yet, so just you wait.
That's the personal training development center continuing education fund. Is very much contributing to Amber's book collection.
John's the book bank. But I see these people consuming all these books at a rapid pace, but not allowing the time to interpret and utilize the information. Like, information isn't knowledge, right? It's two separate things.
Right. So there's information, there's wisdom, and there's insight. And I think that is a progressive scale. I think I mean, information is everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Like it's commoditized. Like, everybody has information. Actually, it's information, insight, wisdom, I think, is how I'd categorize them. And so you have information. Everybody has the same information, right? You can Google something, you can get a stat. It doesn't mean that you can get data, right? So next up is insight, right? Insight is, okay, somebody else has experience into that thing, and you can gain their experience, and that's really valuable. And for a lot of things, that's often enough. And then you have wisdom, which means you've combined information, you've combined other people's insights with your own experience to be able to navigate the situation or the scenario with your own wisdom based off of the combination of those three things. And that's where the magic happens. And that's why you need to do shit. I think you are better off reading, call it a few, 5 to 10 good books a year, maybe twice, than you are trying to read a lot of books. And like, if a book isn't hitting for you, put it down.
That was the next
one. Put that shit down. Oh, is it okay?
Yep.
So what's the next one? So read it out, because we'll segue into it.
If a book's bad, stop reading. If it's good, read it twice.
There are books that I revisit every year. It's actually on my desk right now. Yep. This book, called Perennial Seller. Look how many tabs I got in this thing. Right. This is a book by Ryan Holiday, and Ryan Holiday is all about stoicism and stuff like that now. But I actually think this is his best book, and it's very, very underrated. And it's all about how to create work that lasts and stands the test of time. It's not one-hit wonders. It's not quick hit stuff. It's like, how can you build something that is going to stand the test of time? And what it really hits on is, once something has continually sold for 10 years, it's called the Lindy effect. Once something has continually sold for 10 years, the odds that it will continue to sell for another 10 years go exponentially up. Like, there's like a tipping point at that 10 years. And every year that something sells over 10 years basically doubles the amount of time that this thing is going to continue to sell. And so Ignite the Fire has been around for 12 years. Like, Ignite the Fire at this point is it's very much an outlier, but it's a book that has survived the Lindy effect, right? It's a perennial seller. And the odds that anything can touch its position is actually pretty small. because it's past that 10-year mark. The Online Trainer Academy too. Online Trainer Academy is its 10th year anniversary. Right. And so there are books that I read every single year. To me, the mark of a great book is a book that no matter where you are in your journey, you get insights that help you go to the next stage. And then once you're at that next stage, you actually gain different insights from the same book that help you progress one step farther.
That's
And
how I
that's
feel
the
about
mark
a
of a
song.
great book.
I feel
And
the
so
same way about
there's
music.
Is it the same thing?
Same for me, it is because as a person who writes lyrics, it's important to me that at any stage in a person's life, they listen to that song or interpret the lyrics, and it means something, and the something that it means changes over the course of time, interacting with the art. That's what makes
So
it.
that's new for me. So give me a couple songs that jump out. Can you think of any off the
Water.
cuff? I give a
Oh,
couple books for me that
yeah.
are like that, but I want to hear songs. So if you're not ready
Yeah.
yet, I can give the books, or if
No,
you're ready, you can go.
yeah. So the first one I would say is "Water Runs Dry." It's a song by Boys to Men, and it's talking about not waiting. In the context of the song, they're talking about not waiting to reconcile a relationship. But the older I've gotten, the more people I've lost,
Mm.
the more job opportunities I've had, or turned down, or whatever. I realize the importance of being in the moment and not allowing myself to wait until that water runs dry. The second one that I would think of is it's a song by Ludacris and Usher, which sounds crazy, but it's called I think it's called "Look to the Stars," something
Okay.
like that. It was on a Ludaversal album, but in the context of that song,
Ludaversal,
That's amazing.
amazing.
Ludaversal, yeah, because Ludacris was saying he was a master of his Ludaverse. But it's something like stars, and in the context of that song, he is talking about taking control of your destiny. There's one rap lyric that says something like, you know, it's not done until the flight's over, et cetera, et cetera. And then he says, just realize it's never too late to become the pilot. Right. That's one of the things that's
Not long. The song's
not
called
long.
Not Long.
That's the right song. Not long.
Yeah.
Uh,
One
you
of the
know,
lyrics is "Look to the Stars," but
look
the
to the
song's called
stars.
Not
Yeah,
Long,
yeah,
and it's by Ludacris and Usher. Yeah.
yeah. Ludacris and Usher, and he talks about the context of being a passenger versus the pilot
Mm-hmm.
in an airline situation, and how you may have to endure some turbulent things. But there is not any point at which you cannot take the yoke of the
Right.
airplane and guide it. That's two that come to mind off the
Okay.
top of my
Those are
head.
good. I'm gonna
But
listen to both of those once we're done this podcast.
and of course
So
Brick
"Water
House.
Runs Dry" by Boys to Men,
Hmm.
and
Not long.
"Not Long" by Ludacris and Usher.
And
Okay,
then
I'll give you my two books, and then we'll move on real quick to the next one.
sweet.
My two books are, I mean, there's more than two books that I revisit every year, but two that I absolutely revisit every year. Number one is "Anti-Fragile" by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. Taleb, I think Taleb actually. I mean, I already told you "Perennial Seller." I read that one pretty often as well. And then I talk about it all the time. "The Psychology of Money" by Morgan Housel. It's a
Yeah.
relatively new book, so I've only read it the last 2 years, but I've probably read it 4 times, and I get new insights every single time. The other one that I'll add in is "Thinking Fast and Slow" by Kahneman. Basically, if you want to learn something, the most important thing you can ever learn is how humans operate, particularly the biases that um, make us operate the way that we do, and that's all behavioral psychology. And Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman are the forefathers of it. Like learn from them. Basically, every other book, like Hooked by Neil Ayar, like Nudge, there's so many books. Predictably Irrational. Uh, it's all based off of the work of these guys. So go to the source first, learn it, and then you can start to look at other people's interpretations of the work. But I think that you should go to the source first. So those are mine.
All right, so next, professionalism only impresses people you don't like who won't buy. It's a trap.
I don't even know how to tackle this one. I get more questions on this one than anything else. I mean, I don't know. We did a podcast the other day talking about a continuing education course for our industry, and I think we started the episode by talking about black guy sex stuff. So
Mhm.
if you didn't think that was funny and you were offended by that,
Uh.
you probably aren't gonna like me and aren't gonna buy from me, and that's fine. There's other people who will be stiff and put on a tie and point to a fucking PowerPoint and give you their 5-step
Yes.
acronym for achieving a thing, and like that's fine. But that's not me. And I think increasingly people want to buy from people want to buy from people who are like them. And we're all a little bit weird. We should all let our geek flag fly a little bit more. We should all be ourselves a little bit more. And what that will do is that will attract people who are like us, and they'll really feel a connection to us, and that will repel people who aren't. And when you do that, it's scary because you're going to have people who are going to come to you and they're going to say, oh my God, I can't believe that's not professional. You said fucking shit and you're talking about black guy sex stuff. And I'm like, well, I think penises are funny. And so, like, I don't know, where do we go from here? Like, there's just, you're not going to sell to everybody anyway. There are always, the people who are going to speak out to you and say that's not professional, even if they were going to be a customer of yours, they were never going to be a good customer of yours or a long-term customer of yours. You can't hide anymore. I like podcasts particularly, and I think one of the reasons, I mean, podcasts convert customers better than any other media. There's no question. Podcasts are also the single hardest platform to build. It's just the amount of time, the amount of effort. There isn't the organic search and discovery of podcasts like there is in other things. And also, a podcast episode you got to listen to and probably listen to for like a long time before you decide whether you like it or not. You can't just see like words on a TikTok and be like, oh, that looks funny, or like that person looks good, or whatever, and decide that you're going to listen to it. That doesn't exist on a podcast. So you have to earn the right to go deep with somebody and hope that they're going to tell somebody else or share it or whatever, which whenever you do that, by the way, we're super appreciative because podcasts are really hard to grow. So if you do enjoy this podcast, please tell somebody else about it today and encourage them to listen to an episode. But you kind of have to build it like somewhere else. So when I decided I wanted to restart this podcast, the obvious choice, I decided that I was going to build a big platform on Instagram for a year and a half before I started a podcast. Because I knew that you can build a platform on Instagram with the right steps. I know that you can do in a reliable way. And I knew that was going to give me an opportunity to be able to go deep on a podcast. But you can't start the podcast first. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I did the front end, more superficial, short form social media stuff first, in the hopes that will encourage people to come here and go deeper on the podcast. Because on a podcast, I can't hide who I am. And you're either going to like it or think it's funny or think it's weird or whatever, but like not quite sure why you enjoy this, but you keep coming back to it. Or you don't, or you're like, I can't believe they're talking about that stuff. This is supposed to be professional education. And you're going to go listen to the fucking NASM show or some shit like that. And that's fine. Like, that's cool if that's what you want. Point is, if that's you, you're not listening anymore anyway. But if that was you, you're not right for me. And you were never really going to buy from me. And so I don't need to impress people by quote unquote being professional. I think actually the most professional thing that you can do is to work as much as possible in alignment with who you really are.
I love that was a really great way to say it's not me, it's you.
Yeah, basically.
I know. I know. It just made me laugh.
Is it not? There's a lot of people in this world who might buy from you. People are like, oh, is the fitness industry saturated? Like, how many people live in the United States alone?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Look at the percentages of people that buy fitness. Like, is it sad? Are there a lot of people talking? Yeah. Are there a lot of them that are actually talking in any way that's meaningful or special or unique or stands out in any way? No.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not.
Because they're all trying to be professional. And in doing that, they're boring as shit. They're not appealing to anybody. and they're scared and they're protected. And as a result, they're never letting anybody in to see who they really are, which means nobody ever feels connected to them.
And it's hard to build trust that way too. So
Yeah.
Generation Xers struggle with this, particularly
How
in
old's Generation X? I don't know what the generations are. What am I?
Like
you're an elder
mid
millennial.
40s. Yeah.
You got to be. Does it go up or down? Like if you're older, or you like a?
Yeah, you're old now. It's 40s and 50s. Like
generation. So what are you? Are you like Generation M?
And I'm X. I'm 1974, so I'm squarely in the X. Yeah, but what I was trying to say was, even with our coaches in the OTA, the people that we mentor, there's a distinct pull to professionalism from the coaches my age, because we grew up in an era where all of your presentations in school were ironed out and perfect, and you wore your shirt and tie to school to do your presentation. We grew up in an era where you had professionally shot commercials on television, professionally shot radio spots. So because we now have access easily to the same technology that can produce what we grew up with, we think that's the best way to perform in our business. And everything in marketing is so much more humorous, guerrilla style. So the
best converting stuff is often pretty ugly.
Right. Absolutely. So one of the things I try to relax our coaches with, who are my age or around that age, is, hey, just get on the camera, bro, and just say something. Like, don't worry about it. Nobody's watching yet anyway. Just do something. That professionalism, it's not going to help because everybody can do it now.
Well, and
everybody can make.
Would you say it's a sign of insecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the perceived professionalism insulates me, right? I don't have to worry about making a mistake if I've practiced this 30-second reel for the last week and a half. There's no way that I'm going to make an error, but then there's also no way that any of my humanity is going to come through. And that's the problem. I'm done.
Bravo.
Yeah, it's funny when I tried one time, I got like a nice camera and like did these professionally shot Instagram videos, and they all just performed horribly, to the point where I think I shot 80 of them. I think I posted 5, and the other ones we just trashed. And it's just like, if I just like lap into my phone, it's people like it more. I don't know about the insecurity thing. I don't really have comment on that part.
That's all right.
Yeah.
We know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't feel feelings. And I've never really had any. I've never had any nerves about kind of what people think. I mean, I think I probably do. I feel like I should, but I've never had any issues of standing on stage and speaking or anything like that. So maybe I just don't feel.
I hate you for that.
So
I have enough for both of us.
Something that I do. I know. Right. I love making you go speak.
I had to do a improv speech about bananas in high school, and I cried the entire time. It was only supposed to be like 2 minutes, but I cried the entire time.
Oh my god!
Talk to you about bananas for 2 minutes?
Nope.
All right, what we got next?
Let's see. People who are not punctual cannot be trusted.
Bananas are messed up, man. Bananas, like the history of the banana trade. Read a book called The Fish That Ate the Whale. It's a great book by Rich Cohen. It's all the history of the banana trade. It was messed up. The amount of like the dude at one point, Union Fruit, who owned the banana trade, owned something like 80% of all of the land in Honduras. And it was just like massive slave labor around like the Central American Isthmus. It was crazy. It's a crazy story.
Red. He's like, that was not a challenge, Jonathan.
Oh my gosh.
I keep going. I can probably go for about 10 minutes.
We believe you.
Yeah. Don't prove it.
Part of the issue when they first, because they don't grow in North America, right? They only grow in like really wet, moist things. Well, one of the other things that's interesting about bananas is that bananas, it's one of the biggest advantages to bananas, but also one of the biggest vulnerabilities is bananas actually clone themselves. They don't have seeds or anything like that. They clone themselves. And so if a disease or something takes over a banana, it can wipe out like the entire breed of banana really, really quickly. But one of the biggest problems was that they bring them overseas to like the United States, and they started as a delicacy because they'd have to bring the unripes across, and depending on like the winds and the ships and stuff like that, they might not like get to the United States on time. The stuff would ripen once you pick it, because bananas don't ripen on the stalk. They only ripen when they're actually pulled. You want me to keep going?
No, I think
Good.
we're.
What's the next one? Punctuality.
Yeah.
This is so. I always get shit when I talk about this one. People are like, "Well, you know, I have, I have, what do they say?
ADHD. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I just don't respond to them because I don't really care to. But I always get shit with this. This is my experience. Whenever I've worked with anybody that is late, if you're late because something happens once in a blue moon, shit happens, right? Whenever I've worked with somebody who is a little bit late, to me, it has proven out to be a sign of disrespect for my own time, which translates into a disrespect for me, and they have never been good people to work with. People who have been on our staff, people I've partnered with. Punctuality has become now, because of my experience with it so many times, similar to the things where people talk about how trustworthy they are. I now largely filter people I want to work with or don't work with based off of how punctual they are, because I can't I can't make that decision later on after all of the data's there. I have to almost cheat.
Mm-hmm.
And punctuality is one of the cheats that I've discovered. And so, again, I mean, if you're late all the time, does that mean that you're necessarily like a bad person or don't do good work? No, but it has proven out to me to be, over the years, that the odds are much less good that you're going to be good to work with. And if you're going to be late, or if you think you might be late because of extraneous circumstances, you get ahead of it. It's not hard to do. For example, if I'm doing like a call with somebody and I know that something might get in the way beforehand or my time's tight, I'll give that person an option in advance. I'll say, hey, Wen, look, I know we're talking tomorrow at 3, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to do my best to be on time, but I got this thing beforehand. The time's really tight. If it's better for you, I'm happy to reschedule at a time where I can be sure that I will be on time. Or there's a chance that I might be 5 or 10 minutes late tomorrow. Totally up to you. What do you prefer to do? And then sometimes people are like, yo, let's reschedule. Other times, not so much. But the argument about ADHD, I think, is an interesting one. And Amber, you've come in and you're like, well, I'm diagnosed ADHD, and you're the most punctual person I know. So
I'm chronically early, though.
Me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm chronically early.
So how do you manage it? That's my question.
Extreme anxiety. Because I mean, it's what it is. I'm so like in high school, if I was like walking in at the bell and people turn and look at you, oh, I hated that. And so like I am so terrified of getting in trouble. I am chronically early all the time. So if I show up to a doctor's appointment like 45 minutes early, because I am so worried about being late. But that's just how I deal with it. But there are people that have extreme time blindness, but that's an outlier situation, right? Like we're not talking about outliers. We're talking about like the general population.
Well, and so, yeah. But yeah, this is the advice. What I gave it in one of my books. I can't remember which one. It was one of my less good books, so don't read it. So I won't even say which book it was. But it was, I mean, this advice was good. It was just the rest of the book was not as good. And so it was, the advice was about interviewing for a personal trainer job. And my advice was, show up to the area an hour before your interview and have coffee at a coffee shop around the corner from the gym. Don't cut it close. It's too important. Be in the area early if you can. There's no reason for you to be sitting at home and looking at your watch and being like, okay, the interview is at 4:00. It's going to take me 30 minutes to get there. So if I leave at 3:15, I'll probably be there on time. It's like, nah, leave at 2. You're not doing anything anyway. News for you, that Netflix show was stupid. You're not getting it. You're not enjoying it. You're just at home and don't want to get up. So just go to that area beforehand, read a book in a coffee shop, and guarantee that you're going to be on time, or 5 minutes early. How many more do we have
I was
left?
going to say, I would cut it there because I think what we have left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 left, I think is good for the next one.
Okay, perfect. So we'll cut it there. Thank you for listening to The Obvious Choice. It's funny because it still says The Goodman Show at the top in Riverside.
Yeah, I can't change it.
That hasn't been changed. Yeah, so it still says The Goodman Show, and then I introduced it as whatever the other
The
show
Online
used to
Trainer
be
Show.
called.
Online Trainer. Yeah.
When we had the fun jingle.
This is the Online Trainer Show, Trainer Show, Trainer Show. This is the Obvious Choice Show. I'm glad that we have a podcast.
Still should.
Thank you for listening so much. Look, here's if you vibe with any of this, particularly the professional aspect of it, if that stood out to you, if that was meaningful to you, can you please take a screenshot of you listening to this, or like a picture if you're listening to it in the car? I get pictures of people listening to the car all the time, and just like tag me in it on Instagram or share it to your stories, or even send me a picture if you don't want to post it publicly. Like, it's so much fun to do these podcasts, but I mean, I'm not going to say we're talking into a black hole in, because I'm not going to.
Oh my gosh!
I'm not going to. I wanted to do it.
What hole got a black jar?
I wanted to do it, but I'm not going to do it. But anyway, I mean, and tag Amber and Ren as well if you know their Instagrams and stuff like that. It's just really cool when we get those and we enjoy it. And so, thank you for listening. Talk next time. Bye-bye.